Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm using these hinged letters by Ellen Hudson to create this kind of fan of letters. I have the hinged thanks. They have a whole alphabet, but I just have the thanks. I'm also using this Sunshine die by Simon Says Stamp. In my Avery Elle custom panels, I'm using this curve die, which I use quite a bit from this set. So I'm going to start by taking a piece of 8.5 by 11 that I've cut in half, so it's A2 size Neenah Solar White cardstock. I've scored it in the middle already, and I'm going to measure 2 1/4 inches from the bottom on each side. And this is how I make my curve even across the whole cardstock. So I'm going to take my curve, I'm going to make sure that it hits those guidelines on each side in the same way, so either above it, below it, on top of it, whatever. And then I'll take a piece of surgical tape and just put it right on top of it to hold it into place while I run it through the Big Shot machine. Now for some reason this curve doesn't cut all the way across 5.5, so I just take a scissor and just kind of finish out the curve on each edge. So notice that I scored it, but I didn't fold it until after I ran it through the Big Shot, just because I thought it would be easier. All right, so I'm going to fold this over, make it nice and crisp and flat. And now I've cut 1-inch strips, and they're about between 4 and 4 1/4 wide, of all these different cardstocks, and I'll have the names. There's a few Stampin' Up! And some Simon Says Stamp. The Ellen Hudson dies come on a magnetic sheet, so you can see I can flip this upside down. It doesn't come off. It's a really nice storage pack. So what I'm going to do is place my letter on the right hand side of each one of these strips, and after I die cut it, you'll see that it's scored on the left side. And what I'm going to do is put it in my trimmer, and there's a wire that goes down the center so I can see exactly where I'm cutting. And I'm going to cut across the top so that it hits the top of the T here. I'm going to be really careful because it's not going to be totally exact, and I can always use a scissor to kind of cut it off if it doesn't go all the way to the edge. And then I'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So the width of the strip that goes out from the left of the letter is going to be the height of the letter exactly. So I'm just going to be careful to make sure that I don't hit that letter and just use the scissors to cut out any excess that I have. So you see that when it comes out, I still need to, for this letter, go up, and you could do this with a scissor or a trimmer, to cut out that part. So I want everything cut out except for what comes as the hinge in the die itself. So here is what my final T looks like. And then I'm going to do the H next. And this one is really straightforward and easy because when I put it into the trimmer, it just does the top and the bottom, and then the whole thing comes off. You'll see here in just a second. I actually use this trimmer quite a bit. It's very inexpensive. The cuts aren't exactly that clean, but it's good enough for government work, and it's great for small pieces. All right, so now you see when I pull this off, it comes right off, and this will be my H. I have a full hinge, the score on the left-hand side of the H. And then for the A, I just had to cut out that extra triangle. And then the N just, again, came right off. The K, same exact thing, really super easy. And then the S required a little extra because you could see there's some at the top, the bottom, in the middle. So for this one, I decided to use an X-Acto knife, and I just quickly just kind of cut off the top, the bottom, and then the middle. And you could actually use an X-Acto knife for all of the extra pieces if you want. This one just seemed a little bit extra small. I didn't want to use the trimmer or the scissors. So here is the final S. I wanted to add a little bit of a sentiment. I'm using this word big from the Wish Big stamp from Lawn Fawn's birthday tags. And I've masked the wish so that I would just get the big. I just wanted some white on my letters because it was also very colorful. I just need kind of a break. So I put some white embossing powder and heat it to set it. Next, I'm going to work on my sun. This is Radiant Neon ink. It's neon, but it doesn't actually look neon. It's just a really beautiful, bright yellow color. So I wouldn't let the neon deter you. So I did a direct to paper onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock, and this is pigment ink, so I can sprinkle it with some embossing powder if I want. This is Iridescent Ice by Stampin' Up! It just adds kind of a glittery finish. I did this before on the pocket card I did a few weeks ago. You can see what a beautiful glittery shine you get. Stampin' Up! Doesn't sell this anymore, but there are comparable products that I will link to. And then I'm going to cut my sun out of this. So you get a really pretty yellow sun. And you could just use yellow colored cardstock if you want and put some glitter on it. I also wanted to show you that I had tons of glitter, you can't see it, glittered embossing powder on my craft mat, so I just wiped it up along with the ink. And I wanted to show you that it actually pulls up all the embossing powder onto my absorber here. So you can see it's full of glittery stuff. And I just rinse it off in the sink. So instead of a glitter cloth or something like that, you could actually easily wipe it up with this absorber. So what I've done next is I've marked the center of my curve, and that's so that I can center the word. So right above this mark will be the A, and below it will be the N, because those are the two middle letters. And so I'm gonna meet these letters right at the edge, so there's not gonna be any space, there's no gap, and they're not on top of each other. And then I'm gonna line up the edge next to the letter with the curve. So you can see if it's a score line like the N, my score line is going to be, I think it's called tangent to the circle, to the curve. And so I don't want to see any white behind it, and I don't want to go too far over the circle. So I'm just going to kind of get the perfect spot here, and I want my top letters to be on top. So the end of my word will be underneath. And so I'm going to tuck my K underneath the green N, and again line up my score line so that it's even as well as I can with this curve. And then I'm going to tuck my purple, this is Elegant Eggplant S, and again kind of move it around until I get it right along the edge of this curve. And I'm holding everything together with my left hand. So you could actually put, if you want, some adhesive on the back, just some temporary adhesive, just so that they don't move. Mine did move a little bit, but it wasn't a big deal, and I think I was a little bit too lazy to flip everything over and put some adhesive. So here is what it looks like, and I just carefully pulled my fingers away, and just making sure that the sun is going to be placed right. And then I want to mark where I'm going to cut these colored strips. Because I want them to go kind of into the sun and stop. So I just kind of eyeballed it a little bit, and I sketched a line down where I'm going to draw. And I moved my T by accident a little bit, so I'm just going to put that back into place. I'm also going to be inking up my card base, so I'm going to draw a line so I know how far down to color. And also at the bottom so I don't color further than that, because I don't want it to go below the rainbow. So this is a piece of Eclipse masking tape that I've cut and reused multiple times, as you can tell. And I'm just gonna, it's like a big Post-it. And so I'm gonna put it on top of my letters here, and I'm gonna press them firmly because I want to make sure that each individual letter is sticking to this masking tape. And the reason why it's curling is because mine comes on a roll. So I'm gonna pick this up, and that way I know exactly where everything needs to go, and they'll go right back in the same spot. I'm going to ink the base up with some Distress Oxide Broken China. I've been using my oxide inks a lot more than my regular Distress inks. You can see I realized I needed to mask the other side here. They're just really super easy to blend, very forgiving. You can put multiple layers and make it as dark as you want. So I'm going to speed this up here, and I'm going to color all the way down to the pencil guidelines that I already drew. And then I'll put my sun up there, and I'm missing a hole to the left there at the bottom, but I'm just going to fill that in later. So I'm going to just I just want to cover up the areas that I don't want water, because why put water on cardstock you don't need? So I just put kind of some wrapper from a stamp set, and then my Stamp-A-Majig sheet on top. And I put some water into my hand, and then I just kind of flicked it. And then I wiped it up with a tissue, and I let it dry for just a little bit. And in the meantime, I'm going to use my scissor to cut along that pencil line that I drew. And now I'll erase my lines, and I also need to mark the center on the inside of the card. So at first I was going to measure it, and I'm like, no, I just eyeball it. So I already drew that pencil line, and now I'm going to do it on the other side, just carefully in the same exact spot. I'm going to use my strongest glue for this. So I'm going to cover the entire other side. Now it's still on the masking tape, and you can see I'm making sure that I cover everything I possibly can, because some of the cardstock is not, some of the letters don't have a lot of cardstock showing because they're layered. So I made sure I covered each one, and then I kind of went over the whole thing side to side. Now I'm just making sure that I'm doing this right, because I don't want to glue it to the wrong spot. And I'm just going, that's why I put the pencil line on the inside, so that I can make sure I put that right between the A and the N like I originally planned. And I'm just, you know, making sure that I have all of my letters placed correctly based on that pencil line, so that they're not behind the white. and I'll just press that down into place. And I put an acrylic block on here to let it dry, because when I take the masking tape off, I want to make sure that it's dry. So I let that dry for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and now I'm going to peel it away, and everything is exactly in the spot that I had it. And so that worked out really well, and I can see my thanks also on the inside of the card. So here's my sign. You can see I've got that hole at the bottom. I'm just going to mark with a pencil how far down I need to ink that small spot, and then I'll take my oxide ink and do it just a little bit right there, and then I'll put my sun, and you can see that now I have that little dot area covered. You could of course just leave that blank. I noticed my sun was a little bit warped from the embossing, so I decided to cut individual strips of the Scotch foam tape and put it on all of the sun points. And then I just popped it right there at the edge of the rainbow. I actually thought about putting a face on the sun, but then I thought it would be too distracting from the big thanks, and it would make the card too busy. So I just left it blank, and it's nice and pretty and glittery. And that is the card for today. So another way to use these hinged letters in a creative way. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.